What are you waiting for? You're looking fine today.
drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million using its locally developed Yuri rocket. Arirang. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. These are the stories making the headlines at this hour.
President Lee Jae-myung attended the G7 summit in France and discussed private investment for international development, as well as AI cooperation. On the sidelines of the event, he also briefly met with U.S. President Donald Trump and asked him to lead a peaceful approach on North Korea. And Trump says Iran will never have a nuclear weapon under a new framework agreement reached with the United States. The deal also reportedly includes $300 billion of private investment to rebuild Iran's infrastructure, with over half the sum already committed by global firms. With the framework deal with Iran now reached, the tension is now turning to ending the war in Ukraine. Trump says he had productive talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the G7 summit, pledged further support to Kyiv and urged Moscow to make a deal to end the four-year war. As the final leg of his trip to Europe, President Lee Jae-myung attended the G7 summit in France. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
World leaders are in the French town of Evian-les-Bains for the gathering of the world's most influential powers. Leaders from the G7 countries were present, including U.S. President Donald Trump, and 5 other leaders were invited, including South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. The host, French President Emmanuel Macron, greeted guests one by one.
How are you, Mr. President? I'm so happy. How are you?
The session began with a group photo during which President Lee met his American counterpart Trump for a short greeting. In the readout, the Blue House said Trump asked Lee about recent developments in inter-Korean relations, and Lee asked Trump to lead a peaceful resolution of issues relating to North Korea, noting Trump's contribution to the recent U.S.-Iran peace agreement. Trump reportedly responded positively. Tuesday's session addressed reforming current international development cooperation system, aiming to reduce financial dependency on external assistance and create progress incentives. In line with that, the South Korean president stressed the importance of private capital, introducing a recent case where South Korea helped Indonesia secure private investment worth $50 million through its financial assistance in the agriculture and energy sectors. President Lee pitched his vision for a global AI-basic society, where the fruits of AI technology are shared with all countries, and he also brought up the need to bolster vocational training in developing nations. At the summit, the group of 7 leaders adopted 3 joint statements on mutually beneficial international partnerships, a coordinated response to recent Ebola outbreak, and the fight against cancer. Later in the day, the leaders joined a social dinner and a concert in the small French town, which sits on the southern shore of Lake Geneva.
President Lee says his attendance at the G7 for the second consecutive year demonstrates the trust and expectations of the international community, vowing to safeguard national interests and fulfill South Korea's responsible role on the global stage. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Geneva.
And on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Evian, President Lee Jae-myung held a series of bilateral talks with fellow leaders. On Tuesday, he met with the prime ministers of Canada and Germany to discuss ways to deepen cooperation. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
President Lee Jae-myung's summit diplomacy continued on the sidelines of the G7 summit. On Tuesday, he held back-to-back talks with the leaders of Canada and Germany. President Lee and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney focused on deepening strategic cooperation in defense, security, energy, and critical minerals.
지금은 유사 입장국으로서 서로에게 도움되는 관계로 이 양국 관계가 매우 발전하고 있습니다. 우리 서로 협력할 게 많으니까 오늘 어떤 협력을 더 구체적으로 할지 한번 논의해 보기로 하죠.
Since we last met in Korea, our partnerships continue to grow. We're working across defense, across investment, across trade, on all aspects, including on the cultural side. So it's.
According to the Blue House, President Lee said that Korea is prepared to help strengthen Canada's defense capabilities as a trusted partner. Prime Minister Carney responded that Canada places great importance on cooperation with Korea and agreed to continue discussions on related initiatives. The meeting comes as Korea's Hanwha Ocean and Germany's TKMS compete for a multi-billion-dollar submarine contract from Canada. Citing Canada's Secretary of State for Defense Procurement, Politico reported last Saturday that Ottawa expects to select its preferred bidder within 30 days. Before meeting with Prime Minister Carney, President Lee held separate talks with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. High on the agenda was expanding cooperation in the economy, defense, science and technology sectors, as well as international security.
독일과 대한민국은 많은 영역에서 서로 협력하고 또 협력을 통해 시너지를 만들 수 있는 국가라고 생각합니다.
On defense, the two leaders discussed moving beyond competition toward joint research and development, co-production, and joint entry into third country markets. Chancellor Merz also invited President Lee to the Asia-Pacific Conference of German Business, which will be held in Seoul later this year.
So I'm very much looking forward to my visit to your country by the end of October. We invite you to give a speech and to be part of this important conference.
More bilateral meetings are expected on Wednesday, the final day of this year's G7 summit. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
A new U.S.-Iran framework agreement has halted the 15-week conflict and permanently blocked Tehran from acquiring nuclear weapons and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. A $300 billion private investment fund has been established to back the peace deal, with over half the sum already committed by global firms. Our Kim Do-yeon has the details.
Iran will be permanently barred from developing or acquiring nuclear weapons under a new framework agreement reached with the United States. That's according to U.S. President Donald Trump at the G7 summit in France on Tuesday as he addressed the U.S.-Iran deal to end the war.
Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. That's what it says. It won't have one to buy, to develop. They will not have a nuclear weapon. And I would say that's about 99.9% of what I wanted, because we couldn't let that happen.
The Memorandum of Understanding also secures immediate halt of the 15-week conflict and the permanent, toll-free reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global oil supply route. President Trump noted that the deal has already begun impacting global markets.
The ships are starting to move nicely. Oil is starting to go, and the prices are coming down rapidly. Stock market is going up rapidly. A lot of good things are happening.
The formal signing ceremony is scheduled for this Friday in Switzerland, after which there will be a 60-day period to finalize the treaty. According to multiple reports, a $300 billion private investment vehicle named the Reconstruction and Development Fund has been established to rebuild Iran. Reuters reports that more than half of that sum has already been committed by international corporations, including firms from South Korea, Japan, Singapore, and the United States. The White House and Vice President J.D. Vance emphasized that the fund is entirely private, utilizing zero U.S. government grants, taxpayer money, or state reparations. The fund remains strictly separate from parallel negotiations regarding the lifting of primary U.S. sanctions and the release of frozen Iranian sovereign assets, and it will not become operational until a final treaty is signed. 김도현, Arirang News.
And U.S. President Donald Trump says he's shifting his focus to ending the war in Ukraine after reaching a framework agreement with Iran. Speaking at the G7 summit in France, Trump said he had productive talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and urged Russia to negotiate a peace deal. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
President Donald Trump said Tuesday that he wants to turn his attention to ending the war in Ukraine after reaching a framework agreement with Iran, and told reporters that the Middle East issue will soon be in the rear-view mirror. Speaking on the sidelines of the Group of Seven summit in France, Trump said he had a very good meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and planned to meet him again later in the day. Trump said he would do whatever he could to help bring an end to the conflict and urged Russia to negotiate a settlement. The U.S. leader noted that both Russia and Ukraine have suffered heavy losses during the war and stressed that a deal should be reached as soon as possible.
Look, Russia should make a deal. Russia's lost tremendous amounts of people, and so has Ukraine. Last month, they lost 35,000 soldiers between the two.
Ukraine continues to demonstrate its ability to strike targets deep inside Russia, using drones and missiles to put growing pressure on the Kremlin, while Moscow has vowed to carry out what it calls systematic attacks on Ukraine. Early Monday, Russian forces launched a series of deadly attacks on Kyiv, including an attack that set fire to a historic monastery. Despite the ongoing challenges, Trump struck an optimistic tone, saying he had productive conversations with both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Zelensky ahead of the summit. He added that there may now be an opportunity to make progress toward ending the war as diplomatic efforts gain renewed attention from world leaders gathered at the G7. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And now for more on the G7 summit in France, we're joined today by Dr. Ban Gil-ju, assistant professor at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Ban, thanks for coming on today.
Good to be with you.
So this is the second year in a row that President Lee Jae-myung has attended the G7 summit, right? What was his main goal and what message is South Korea able to send to the international community?
The Rock administration's diplomatic policy is based upon pragmatic diplomacy. This concept seeks interest maximization, which requires diplomatic flexibility, strategic space, risk management, and geopolitical and diplomatic expansion. To that end, South Korea makes various diplomatic efforts, such as security diplomacy, inclusive diplomacy, and expanded diplomacy. In particular, when it comes to expanded diplomacy, the Lee administration has laid out G7 plus diplomacy. Attending the G7 summit twice in a row is harmonious with this diplomacy. Meanwhile, the 2026 G7 summit deals with key agendas like the Iran war, development programs, AI, digital, and countering Ebola. With that in mind, first of all, South Korea as a global responsible power needs to send a message of its enhanced role in international stability and prosperity. Second, when it comes to maritime security around the Strait of Hormuz, Seoul should send a robust and clear signal that it is willing to make a great effort, not simply to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but to make it back to the international straight in a situation where South Korea is armed with assets enough to do that, such as minesweepers. Third, Seoul needs to show its passion for how to make the best of AI for all humans on the globe in the sense that it seeks to be one of the major AI powers. Fourth, since G7 is based upon a like-minded diplomacy, Seoul should take advantage of this platform for various cooperations, including economic security and critical mineral cooperation. Finally, South Korea needs to serve as an active player for normalizing the functions of international organizations such as the UN in a situation where rules and norms are dysfunctional around the world.
Right, and President Lee also got to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump, and he also sat down for talks with the Canadian Prime Minister. And with Seoul seeking now to secure a submarine deal with Canada, what do these meetings mean for Korea's broader diplomatic interests?
As you might be aware, one of the reasons why leaders should attend major multilateral meetings such as the G7 is that they are able to raise their voices on key agendas, leading to their enhancement of national status and diplomatic interests. The other reason is that they are able to get the chance for various bilateral meetings through this opportunity. In a sense, these bilateral meetings could be more valuable than multilateral meetings themselves. So, the more bilateral meetings are held, the better states are for their diplomatic interests. With this in mind, first of all, the ROC-US summit could be very meaningful if it can be made in this G7 summit because the bilateral summit helps clarify the recently designed alliance architecture under the name of alliance modernization. In particular, this summit is expected to contribute to making key programs like the nuclear-powered submarine project more viable and gain momentum. Second, the bilateral summit between South Korea and Canada matters as well in a situation where, as you mentioned earlier, South Korea jumped into the CPSP, Canadian Patrol Submarine Project, a project worth 60 trillion won, and a final decision is expected to be made anytime soon. The Lee administration is aimed at rising to one of the four major powers in the world in terms of military-industrial sector. South Korea's success in winning this project has a great impact on achieving this objective. Moreover, the possible cooperation on the submarine project between the two countries can create synergy for a more comprehensive cooperation, including economic security and information sharing, simply beyond the military-industrial cooperation. In the meantime, as many bilateral meetings as possible, simply beyond these meetings with the United States, Canada, and Germany, need to be made in order to visualize the G7 plus diplomacy and enhance South Korea's national prestige.
I see. And the U.S.-Iran conflict also dominated discussions at the G7 meeting, especially with Trump claiming that the Strait of Hormuz will be completely open by Friday. But questions remain over waterway fees and Israeli military operations. How do you think these issues will play out from here?
Well, although the signing ceremony will be held on Friday, both the United States and Iran have already signed the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, electronically, which means that key items take effect now. So as of right now, the Strait of Hormuz has started to open. That's a good news. However, we need to closely monitor how situations are going with care, despite the good news that the initial deal was made at the moment. First, this deal is not far from the end of the war, but close to a more consolidated ceasefire than the previous one. Technically, the fights ended, but the war is not over yet. What that means is that war could resume without a successful final deal made under the 6-day negotiations. Second, reopening the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days does not mean that all issues are resolved for the free use of the seas in the Middle East. In particular, since the MOU has not been made public yet, concern is growing that Iran might demand waterway fees after 60 days. To top it off, there's a growing concern that the United States also might remain silent over Iran's attempt to demand waterway fees after 60 days. That's why the international community wants the MOU to be made public as soon as possible so that they will be able to play a role in order for preventing the worst case scenario from happening. Third, as you noted, Israel could be recognized as a key factor in how things are going in the region. Particularly, Iran strongly wants to include Lebanon in the non-conflict zones under the deal. But Israel shows its willingness to continue its fight against Hezbollah in Lebanon. So Israel's offense in Lebanon could derail the peace roadmap being made under the MOU framework. Finally, hardliners in Iran, such as the IRGC, cannot be excluded as one of the key issues in a situation where they strongly oppose this deal. If they attempt to make provocations despite this deal, the military and security situations could be shaky. All in all, the deal is a positive sign, but at the same time, risk management still matters.
Right, we'll have to see how the situation plays out. All right, Professor Ban, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your time and insight. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Korean retail investors poured over $800 million into SpaceX shares on the company's first day of trading, underscoring strong demand for high-profile U.S. stocks. According to a financial investment industry official on Wednesday, individual investors purchased a net $808 million worth of SpaceX shares on June 12 through 11 brokerage firms. The buying spree came on SpaceX's Nasdaq debut and marked one of the largest single-day purchases of a single U.S. stock by Korean retail investors. Meanwhile, North Korea has condemned a recent large-scale live-fire exercise by Japan's ground self-defense force, calling it a, quote, test of reinvasion capability. In an article on Tuesday, the ruling party newspaper Nodongshinmun claimed Japan's counter-strike capability was a preemptive strike capability. It also said the inclusion of long-range missiles and high-speed glide weapons in the early June drill implies Japan has ushered in active preparations for preemptive strikes. Also making reference to Japan's annual defense white paper that describes North Korea as an imminent threat, the newspaper added that the target of the recent Japanese training was clear.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. The FBI thwarted a planned attack on the UFC event held at the White House over the weekend. Court documents revealed on Tuesday show that 5 people were arrested. The alleged plot involved using explosive-laden drones to strike the north side of the White House to funnel attendees toward an exit where snipers planned to fire on fleeing politicians. Authorities discovered the plot after the mother of one suspect called police in Ohio to report her son's weapons purchases. President Trump attended the event on his 80th birthday without incident alongside senior Republican lawmakers and donors. The 5 suspects appear to subscribe to anti-government conspiracy theories and were motivated in part by anger over the handling of files related to Jeffrey Epstein. At least 3 face charges of conspiracy to commit murder. A magnitude 6.7 earthquake struck central Indonesia's Sulawesi island on Tuesday, injuring dozens of people and damaging homes in a region still haunted by a deadly quake and tsunami 8 years ago. The quake was centered about 43 kilometers east-southeast of Palu at a depth of 10 kilometers. Strong shaking sent residents fleeing into open areas, and several hospitals evacuated patients outdoors. At least 32 people were injured, including 8 seriously in the hardest-hit Sigi Regency, and more than 100 were displaced. More than 55 aftershocks followed throughout the day. In 2018, an earthquake and a tsunami killed more than 4,000 people in the same region. India temporarily blocked the messaging app Telegram on Tuesday, saying that it was used to leak the questions for the National Medical Entrance Exam. The ban runs until June 22nd and comes after the government canceled the medical entrance test and voided the results of more than 2 million students last month over allegations its questions had been leaked. Telegram said the ban punishes more than 150 million ordinary users in India rather than those who leaked the materials, adding the leaks had simply moved to other apps. A digital rights group called the measure a disproportionate response. Google and Apple received orders to temporarily delist Telegram from their app stores. Australia's Weather Bureau gave a strong warning on Tuesday that the El Nino pattern formed in the tropical Pacific could intensify in the second half of 2026, becoming one of the strongest in 7 decades. Forecasters expect the event to bring excessive rain to the Americas and hot, dry conditions across Asia, where crop planting is already being disrupted. Sea surface temperatures in the region have exceeded El Nino thresholds, and around half of the forecasting models indicate the event could peak among the highest levels observed since 1950. The pattern is particularly damaging to Australia, which is one of the world's largest exporters of wheat, sugar, and beef.
It's another hot summer day across Korea with both rain and passing showers in the forecast. About the rain first, the mountainous areas of Jeju could see 10 to 60 millimeters of showers, while Jeollado and Gyeongsang-Namdo province might get 5 to 20 millimeters. Meanwhile, the rest of the country could see passing rain with 5 to 60 millimeters in the forecast, along with thunderstorms. And this afternoon, most regions will see afternoon temperatures climb above 30 degrees Celsius. Seoul, Daegu both getting up to 31 degrees, Gyeongju at 30 degrees Celsius. But the combination of heat and humidity will make it feel even warmer and more uncomfortable. Then we're looking at a chance of more sudden rain tomorrow. Then Jeju and the South Coast will see more rain this week as the monsoon season is right around the corner.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Whoever wears the crown must bear its weight. What did the weight of the golden crown mean to the rulers of Shilla 1500 years ago? When it was first excavated, the golden crown was found flattened and folded into a cone shape, covering the face of the deceased. This dazzling artifact wasn't merely a funerary object placed to guard the tomb, or a true crown that once stood at the very peak of living power. Those who believe it was worn point to its tree-shaped ornaments, arguing that silver was mixed in, allowing the decorations to stand firm without bending. The exact purpose remains unknown, a symbol of royal authority and life, and as a final gesture of respect, being placed over the face to honor him with the highest form of tribute. The gold belt discovered alongside the crown likewise attests to the sacred authority of its wearer. Each shimmering gold plate is etched with symbols of authority. The golden crown and belt hallmarks of Shila's golden age and flourishing renaissance still rate an enduring golden presence today. Only those who bore its weight could possess the Shila's crown and belt, a dazzling testament to Shila's enduring legacy.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Wednesday, June 17th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Today's date is Hyun.
Happy Hump Day.
Happy Hump Day, and also Won Min-soo-kun.
Hello, happy to be here.
To have you, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. We're now right in the middle of the work week, and for many office workers, there's a new colleague quietly showing up at the desk every day. Artificial intelligence. From drafting emails and translating documents to even delivering the news, AI is becoming an increasingly common part of the workplace. While some see it as a powerful tool that boosts productivity, others worry it could eventually replace jobs that once seemed quite secure. So to start off our discussion today, let's ask our panelists who are both part of the media industry. So Hyun, how do you feel about the growing use of AI news anchors and also as translators?
To talk about translating gigs first, I don't think I've received any related translating gigs for the past 2-3 years. There were a few proofreading inquiries here and there, but I mean, even that is now all done through the help of AI to a point where it's becoming so accurate that English native speakers like us are becoming kind of useless because everything's done through AI so quickly and more efficiently. Now, in the news industry, I know AI anchors have been implemented along with AI voice. And I remember many reporters here at Arirang, they would come up to me to ask for my English dub a few years back because they needed a male voice. But nowadays, so pretty much been all replaced by AI voice, multiple versions of male AI voices. But thankfully, the emceeing gigs that I do every now and then, which requires a lot of human-to-human communication and very quick responses through like changes. Improvising as well. I think AI cannot fully replace the emceeing gigs that I'm doing right now, which is, I guess, one positive part that I'm actually thankful of before AI replaces everything.
I actually was one of the reporters that asked you to dub, and you were always very nice about it. But it was nice having AI to help out sometimes when people weren't always available. So that's changed. What about you?
Right. So as Kyun mentioned, translation is an easy one. Writing emails or texting in another language has become really easy compared to the past, since AI can do it in seconds. And about the news, I personally watch a lot of news clips on YouTube, mainly about Korean and US politics, economy, and IT as well. I know it's a little bit old for my age, but I like it. And I definitely do notice that many videos are made with AI anchors or AI voices nowadays. And I'll be very honest with this one. The AI voices, it's not my favorite. And I'm saying this not because Sujin is right next to me, who is a human anchor, but because news, it's all about credibility and reliability, right? I mean, they probably all approved it. It was probably approved by humans, and they proofread everything. But I don't know, it just feels a little bit different when you know that the news that you're watching is made with or sometimes made by AI. So I definitely feel that AI is taking over the media industry,
Right, I think that's a very interesting distinction. So AI may be able to deliver information, but building trust with an audience is a much more complicated task. And that's why we're going to talk more about this. But first, let's take a look at the screen. With the development of artificial intelligence accelerating faster than ever, AI has become a part of everyday life for millions of people around the world. What started as a tool for handling simple, repetitive tasks has now evolved into something far more powerful, performing complex calculations, translating languages, and even delivering the news. Today on News Generation, we explore how AI is driving layoffs across the United States, which professions are feeling the impact most, and how young people around the world are adapting to a future where artificial intelligence is becoming an increasingly common coworker, and in some cases, a replacement. Just as we saw in the video, AI is no longer a technology of the future. It's already reshaping workplaces around the world. And for some companies, that transformation is coming with a human cost. So how is AI driving mass layoffs in the US, Kyun?
So looking at some big tech companies in the US gives us a clear view of how much AI is actually impacting the employment industry, employment, and leading to layoffs. So after laying off 14,000 employees in October last year, Amazon announced another round of cuts in January, reducing its workforce by an additional 16,000 employees. So in total, the company laid off roughly 10% of its 350,000 headquarters staff. Now, the decision was driven by the belief that reducing labor costs and redirecting those resources toward AI investment will be a better use of capital in the long run. Now, in the case of Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, they also laid off around 8,000 employees just last month, about 10% of its total workforce, and announced plans to develop super intelligent AI, again, investing labor costs into AI development. Now, as major tech companies continue to carry out large-scale layoffs, concerns and uncertainty have been spreading across the US market, raising questions whether AI whether it's really helping the livelihoods of people. Because I remember how when Elon Musk and Sam Altman, when they first made OpenAI, they said this is for humanity. It's to help humanity to thrive and live a better life. But it is in some sense, but at the same time, it's losing a lot of jobs, laying off a lot of people. So I think it's a double-edged sword for now.
Right. So that is a striking example of how seriously companies are betting on AI, and the impact may extend far beyond a handful of tech giants. So also in Korea recently, the recent figures show that the job market in Korea saw a decline. So how much of today's job market is being caused by AI?
Right. So before sharing the exact numbers, the tasks and positions that are that are in the front line in terms of getting attacked or taken over by AI are usually programming, customer service, translation, as we discussed, document writing, and data analysis. Now that AIs are more than capable of performing these tasks seamlessly, many companies in general, even outside of big tech companies, require less people than before. And according to the job and executive coaching firm Challenger, Gray & Christmas, as of May 2026, about 40% of layoffs was due to AI replacement. And this trend is only projected to increase globally throughout the upcoming years.
Right. So those numbers suggest AI is no longer just changing how we work. It's changing who gets hired and who doesn't. And the effects, however, aren't being felt equally across the workforce. So which jobs are being hit the hardest by AI right now?
While AI is expected to affect pretty much every single industry out there, its impact is surprisingly making a much stronger effect in highly educated, high-income, white-collar workers' jobs. In particular, AI has advanced to the point where many junior-level roles in professions such as law and accounting are becoming less necessary. As a result, many younger professionals who have only recently earned their licenses or certifications are finding it increasingly difficult to secure employment. Tasks that were once handled by entry-level lawyers, such as legal research, document review, and drafting complaints, can now be performed much quicker and efficiently by AI systems. Hence, many senior lawyers see AI agents to be more convenient and, of course, cost-effective. Now, in the accounting profession, similar challenges are being faced as well. In Korea alone, fewer than 30% of those who actually passed the certified public accountant examination last year registered in a training institution to actually become a professional lawyer. So only just 3 in 10 are doing this. But only a decade ago, accounting was considered one of the most prestigious and secure professional careers. But right now, today, the profession is experiencing severe employment difficulties because of AI.
That's quite shocking. I actually have a family member who is a CPA,
okay.
so that these number figures are quite surprising. So it's striking to hear that some of the careers once considered the safest and most prestigious are now also among those feeling the greatest pressure from AI. To get a more in-depth perspective on this, we're going to talk to a lawyer, and that conversation will take place right after break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
To learn more about how AI is transforming the legal profession, we're joined today by Kim Ji-soo, a lawyer here in Korea. So hello, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello, morning. Thank you for having me.
For coming on. So Ji-soo, what legal tasks can AI, do you think, in your opinion, can perform quite effectively?
So as we've mentioned it before, AI is already very good at a lot of the work that used to be done by junior lawyers. For example, when a law firm is asked to advise on a legal issue, there's usually a lot of groundwork to be done. For example, someone has to research the law, review the cases, and go through all the documents they have, and we need to put together all in an initial draft. So traditionally, much of that work would have been handled by junior associate levels, but today AI can do it, a lot of it much faster. So in that sense, AI is already replacing much of the tasks junior lawyers used to perform. But I would also like to mention that still lawyers and accountants is still a prestigious job to take, because what it hasn't replaced yet is the legal judgment area. So maybe we can discuss it a later part.
So that leads me to my next question. How do legal professionals like yourself feel about the rapid development of AI?
So the attitude has changed quite a bit over the last few years. When tools like ChatGPT first appeared, there were a lot of uncertainties, so nobody really knew how capable the technology would become. So naturally, there were some concerns within the profession. However, as we started using these tools, as lawyers started using these tools, a much clearer picture has emerged. So AI turned out to be extremely useful, but also more limited than many people initially presumed. So today, many lawyers see AI less as a threat and more as a tool. It helps us work faster, handle information more efficiently, and focus on higher valued work. So compared to a few years ago, there's much greater acceptance of AI within our professions.
Oh, thank you so much for giving us the insightful overview. Now, last question for you. How have the role and status of lawyers changed over the past decade?
So one of the biggest changes is that lawyers are no longer valued simply because we have access to legal information. Today, legal information is prevalent online, and AI can often find relevant laws and cases in just a second. So clients aren't really looking for someone to tell them what the law says, but they're looking for someone who can actually help them understand what the law means for their own situations. That means exercising judgment, assessing risks, and helping clients make important decisions. So in many ways, the role of lawyers has evolved from being a source of legal knowledge into being a trusted advisor and a problem solver.
Right. I think these are really good points. Like, while AI may be changing different industries, like the legal profession or even the broadcast industry, there's some things that only humans can still do. So I think that's a great point to me that you made. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you.
So we just talked to a lawyer about how AI is reshaping the legal profession and creating new challenges for young professionals entering the workforce. But concerns about AI aren't limited to lawyers or Korea and the US. So are white-collar workers overseas women also feeling the pressure of being replaced by AI?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There are even some cases where the white-collar workers are switching to blue-collar jobs too. For example, in a construction specializing college in the UK, more than 600 students were unable to take their program because the number of applicants exceeded the program capacity. And moreover, they still have more than 300 people on the waiting list for other programs like electrical wiring, plumbing, and other traditional blue-collar jobs. Also in Canada, many millennials and Gen Zs are choosing to go to college and learn trades instead of the traditional route or the path of four-year university and landing on a white-collar office job. And this is definitely because blue-collar jobs are less threatened by AI, at least for now, due to the physical requirements and the skills that it needs. And on top of that, as you grow your career as a blue-collar worker, they also often guarantee very competitive salaries. And this goes for other Western countries like Australia and Germany as well.
Right, so that is a remarkable shift, especially considering that office jobs were once seen as the most desirable career path. And as AI continues to transform the labor market, many young people are obviously rethinking their future. So how are Gen Zs and millennials that are currently looking for jobs responding to these changes?
Job security has definitely become, it's job insecurity, that is. It's become widespread among young people, just like what Wonbin just mentioned about how they're just switching to the blue-collar jobs from the traditional, favored white-collar jobs. So according to a survey conducted in April by the Korean Federation of trade unions. Among 1,078 employees at 8 domestic gaming companies, 77% of respondents said they felt insecure about their jobs due to the introduction of AI. IT industry workers, where layoffs have become quite prominent, especially in the US, have become more sensitive to these developments. Now, software developers currently earning six-figure salaries are reportedly enrolling in preparatory courses for government civil service examinations, or called 공무원 시험 in Korean, seeking the stability of public sector employment despite the lower pay. Now, as a result, civil service exam academies have seen a significant increase in the number of working professionals enrolling in recent years, reflecting growing concerns over job security in private IT sector.
Right, so that level of anxiety shows just how uncertain many workers feel about the future of their careers. And at the same time, some young people are taking a very different approach. So how are some young people using AI to stay competitive?
Right, so, well, one advantage that we have as the younger generation is that we adapt quickly, relatively. So we are more comfortable, again, relatively comfortable with using AI for ourselves too. This means that as many young workers are threatened by AI, at the same time, they're also using them as a tool to create additional income or even create a career. AI is most commonly used for making a side hustle, which means a second job for additional income. For example, some people make contents for videos like YouTube and social media. Someone do online drop shipping. Some people do day trading or making courses or services online.
They sound like things that you're doing right now.
Yeah, it's something that I'm trying to implicate AI into my work as well. Yeah, and
you're one of these young people that are
and it's very helpful. It's a way different workflow compared to just me doing everything. So it's very useful and very helpful. And to dig a little bit deeper into how AI is used in these side hustles, the main role of AI is to work as a helper or an agent that often automates this side hustle, which saves us a lot of time and energy.
Right. So it's interesting that the same technology causing anxiety is also creating new opportunities for those who know how to use it. And ultimately, it raises a bigger question about how we should approach an AI-driven future. Now, to close off our discussion today, Kyun, what mindset then should we have in the age of AI?
I know that many young people are worried because of the advancement of AI, including myself, especially those who are actually seeking a job right after graduating, especially in the IT industry or the highly educated white-collar jobs. But I think worrying about it and not doing anything is not going to change anything, but rather slow you down. So I think becoming a top tier or someone who is irreplaceable in any type of job will give you that competitive edge over any kind of technology advancement. Now, unless we see more robots than humans in this world, I think the humans will have more power and control in the end. Now, although everything I'm saying right now is easier said than done, I think, just whatever you do, put in 100% effort because someone is going to see what you've done, and that's going to leave an impression and reputation of you. And I think that would eventually make or break your career, because whatever you do, sometimes you can slack off, which I know many young people do, including the older generation as well. But, there's going to be someone looking over you, looking at what you've done. And by putting in 100% in whatever you do, in whatever field or area, whether you're a student or whether you're actually seeking a job, your first job, if you put in that 100%, it will pile up, accumulate, and build that image only you can have. And eventually that will help you to secure any kind of job and make you stable and help you kind of just stay there until you want to retire yourself instead of being laid off.
Right, in the end, like you said, obviously AI is going to have to be controlled by humans, unless, of course, robots become so advanced. But I think, like you mentioned also before, I think it's also good to develop side hustles, know how to really fully utilize AI. So what are your thoughts on this?
I basically agree with everything that Kyun said, and I just want to close off by borrowing the words of Jensen Huang, who is the CEO of NVIDIA, which everybody knows. Nowadays, he often mentions that intelligence is now a commodity. This means that unlike the past, being the smartest in the room doesn't automatically mean that you're the best, because now we can just ask AI and it'll answer within seconds. In my opinion, we should focus more on building character. Building, which means your mindset, your work ethics, your attitudes, your relationship with people. So when Jensen Huang said that intelligence is now a commodity, it's not the answer of how we should respond or how we should react to the AI rush, but it's definitely a good place for us to start. It's a food for thought, yeah.
So I think he said this in an interview when he was in Korea, right? And I think that before, really popular question that people ask is, do you prefer like a coworker who's good at their job or is a good person?
Yes.
And now with the advent of AI, I feel like now character is going to be more important. So.
That's good news for me. not being, having to become the smartest person in the class. Yeah.
From mass layoffs to the rise of side hustles, AI is changing the rules of the job market in real time. The professions once considered safest are now facing new kinds of competition. And in the end, adaptability may become just as important as experience or credentials. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. Big thanks to Kyun.
Thanks for having me.
And also Wonbin.
Always a pleasure.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully AI will remain our assistant and not our replacement. We are News Generation.
It may have been the tomb of a young prince,